right now there's a story running in your mind. A story about who you are, what you can do, and what's possible for you. But here's the truth. If you feel stuck, if you feel like life keeps repeating the same patterns, it's not because you're broken. It's because the story you keep telling yourself is broken. And today, we're gonna break that old story and write a new one that can change your life forever. Hen intro strong energy, grabbing attention. Let me ask you a question right now. What's the story you've been telling you about your life? Not the story you share on Instagram, not the polished version you give to friends, but the one that plays in your head when you're alone. Whether you realize it or not, that story is the invisible force shaping everything you feel, everything you do, and ultimately everything you get out of life. I'll tell you something, your story is more powerful than your circumstances, more powerful than the economy, more powerful than your past, and even more powerful than the people around you. Why? Because your story is the lens through which you see the world. It's the meaning you attach to every event, every win, every loss. And here's the thing, if you don't consciously choose your story, your brain will recycle an old one, often one that keeps you stuck, driving deeper audience engagement. Think about it. Two people can go through the exact same experience and come out with two completely different lives, all because of the story they attach to it. One person says, I went through a divorce, so that means I'm unlovable. I'll never have a happy relationship again. Another person says, I went through a divorce, and that pain woke me up to love myself, to grow. And now I know I can create something extraordinary in the future. Same event, different story, different life. Your story is the ultimate filter. It determines whether you see opportunity or roadblocks. It determines whether you see yourself as a victim or a creator. It determines whether you take action or make excuses. And here's the brutal truth. You will never rise higher than the story you believe about yourself. Personal story, Tony Robbins' storytelling style. When I was young, I had a story too. My story was that life was unfair, that I didn't have the parents I wanted, that we had no money for food, that I wasn't enough. And if I had kept living inside that story, I would have ended up bitter, angry, and broken. But something shifted. I realized that my circumstances were not my identity. I realized that if I wanted a different future, I needed a different story. So instead of saying, I'm poor and I'll never make it, I said, because I've been poor, I will never settle for less than financial freedom. Because I know what it's like to go hungry, I will make sure my family never feels that again. Do you see the difference? The event was the same, we were broke, but the story I attached to it changed everything. That new story gave me drive, it gave me hunger. It gave me power, reframing direct to audience. Right now, many of you are carrying stories that aren't serving you. Maybe you're saying, I'm too old to change careers. That's a story. Maybe you're saying, I've failed too many times to succeed. That's a story. Maybe you're saying, I didn't grow up with the right connections, so success isn't for me. That's a story. And let me tell you, as long as you keep repeating that story, your brain will find ways to prove it right. Your brain is like a heat-seeking missile. It looks for confirmation of the story you believe. If your story is that you're unlucky, you'll notice every setback and ignore every blessing. If your story is that you're powerful, resourceful, unstoppable, you'll notice opportunities even in the middle of chaos. Which story do you think is going to give you the life you want? An Energy Rise audience participation. I want you to do something right now. Think of one area in your life where you feel stuck. Maybe it's your health, your relationships, your finances, your business, your confidence. Ask yourself, what's the story I've been telling myself in that area? Be honest. Is it a story of excuses, of limitations, of blame? Or is it a story of growth, of possibility, and of certainty? Now here's the key, whatever story you've been telling yourself is not the truth, it's just the meaning you attached. And the meaning you attach is the meaning you live. If you don't like the life you're living, stop blaming the outside world and start changing the story you're telling inside. Example, famous stories. Look at people who changed the world. Oprah had every reason to tell herself a story of pain, abuse, limitation, and poverty. But she told a different story. She told a story of resilience, of vision, and of using her voice to lift others. Steve Jobs could have told himself, I was abandoned as a child. I was fired from the company I created. Life isn't fair. But he told a different story. He told a story of innovation, of relentless creativity, of coming back stronger. And the difference between people who live extraordinary lives and people who stay stuck isn't talent, it isn't luck. It isn't even education, it's the story they choose to live by. That story is either your prison or your passport. Deeper psychology, Tony's teaching style. And let's go deeper. Why do we hold on to old stories? because they give us certainty. Even if the story is painful, at least it's familiar. If your story is "I'll never succeed," at least you know what to expect: disappointment. But the moment you challenge that story, you step into uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. But here's the paradox: uncertainty is where all growth lives. So ask yourself, are you more committed to staying comfortable in an old story, or are you ready to embrace the discomfort of writing a new one? Because that's where freedom begins. A new story is not just words, it's a new identity, a new standard, a new destiny, a high-energy call to awake an audience. I'm telling you, your past does not equal your future. Your failures do not define you. Your circumstances do not own you. The only thing that defines you is the story you keep repeating. And here's the beautiful thing: you are the author. You get to pick up the pen at any moment and say, "This is who I am now. This is what I stand for now. This is what my life means now." But if you don't decide, life will decide for you. And life doesn't care about your comfort. Life will just keep repeating the same cycles until you wake up and say, "No more. This is my story now." The moment you make that shift, the moment you decide that your story is one of strength, one of resilience, one of possibility, you start to see a completely different world. And once you see a new world, you start living a new life. There's strong opening narrator energy, grabbing attention. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize. The only thing that's ever held you back in life is not your lack of resources, not your lack of intelligence, not your lack of opportunities. It's the belief system you've been carrying around. Beliefs are like invisible rules that run your life. They tell you what you can or can't do, what's possible or impossible, what you're worthy of or not worthy of. And most of the time, you don't even question them. But here's the problem: if those beliefs are limiting, they become a glass ceiling you never rise above. If they're empowering, they become rocket fuel that propels you forward. Beliefs are like the governor on an engine. They either cap your speed or unleash your full horsepower. The question is, which kind of beliefs are running your life right now? The driving home the concept interaction. I want you to think about it. Every time you say the words "I can't," you're reinforcing a limiting belief. Every time you say "that's just who I am," you're reinforcing a limiting belief. Every time you say "that'll never work for me," you're reinforcing a limiting belief. And here's the kicker: your brain listens. It takes those words as commands and starts filtering your reality to make sure you stay consistent with that belief. Let's say your belief is "I'm not good with money." Guess what? Even if you win the lottery, even if someone hands you $1 million, you'll find a way to sabotage it because you're not living out of your potential, you're living out of your belief. But if your belief is "I'm resourceful, I'm disciplined, I always find a way to grow financially," then no matter how tough things get, you'll figure it out. Same person, same brain, different beliefs, completely different life. Personal story, Tony style. When I was younger, I had beliefs that were crushing me. I believed that because I didn't have the right family, because we didn't have money, because I didn't go to college, that success wasn't possible for me. That was my internal story, and it was poisoning my potential. But then I started studying people who had made it. I realized something powerful. They weren't necessarily smarter than me. They weren't necessarily luckier than me, but they believed differently. So I decided to change my beliefs. I stopped saying, "I can't because of my past," and I started saying, "Because of my past, I must." I stopped saying, "I don't know how," and I started saying, "If I stay hungry, I'll learn how." And those shifts changed everything. I went from feeling powerless to feeling unstoppable. It wasn't magic. It was simply trading in limiting beliefs for empowering ones. Explaining limiting beliefs engagement. Limiting beliefs come in many forms. Some of you carry beliefs about your abilities. "I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not disciplined enough." Some of you carry beliefs about your worth. "I don't deserve success. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve happiness." Some of you carry beliefs about the world. The system is rigged. People can't be trusted. Opportunities only go to the lucky ones. And if you buy into those stories, your mind will filter your life to prove them true. You've got to understand, beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you can't do something, your brain won't even look for the path. But if you believe you must do something, your brain will light up with creativity, with determination, with solutions you never saw before. The belief comes first, the results come after, and engaging the crowd, interactive moment. I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're standing in front of a locked door. You try the handle, but it doesn't budge. Most people say, "See, the door's locked. It's impossible." That's the limiting belief. But an empowering belief says, there's a key somewhere. Maybe it's in my pocket, maybe I've got to knock, maybe I've got to break it down, but I'll find a way, same door, same challenge. Two completely different outcomes based on belief. Which one do you live in? Right now, I want you to think of one belief you've been carrying that has limited you. Be honest. Maybe it's I'll never get out of debt. Maybe it's I'll never be confident. Maybe it's I'll never have a great relationship. What is it for you? Identify it, because you can't change something you're not even aware of. Hot examples, famous transformations. Look at the greats. Take Muhammad Ali. Before he ever stepped into the ring, before he became a champion, what did he say? I am the greatest. He said it before he was. That was an empowering belief. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That was an empowering belief. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, and instead of saying, my life is over, he said, this struggle will become the foundation of freedom for my people. That was an empowering belief. And on the flip side, how many people do you know who had incredible talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but their limiting beliefs kept them stuck? They had all the resources, but they didn't believe they could use them. That's the tragedy of a limiting belief. It keeps the door locked even when the key is already in your hand. Breaking beliefs, Tony's style of challenge. So, how do you destroy a limiting belief? You challenge it. You don't just accept it because your mind said it once or because your parents said it years ago. You question it. You test it. You ask yourself, is this belief based on truth? Or is it just a habit of thought? You ask yourself, if I keep living with this belief, where will my life be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And then you ask, what would my life look like if I replaced this with a belief that empowers me instead? The moment you start asking better questions, your brain gives you better answers. And those answers build new beliefs. Beliefs like, I'm resourceful, I can figure anything out, I've overcome before, I can overcome again. My past doesn't define me, it prepares me, I'm built for more. Those are empowering beliefs. And the second you embody them, you start showing up differently, acting differently, living differently, energy rising, intensity building. Your beliefs are like the operating system of your mind. If the software is outdated, your life is going to crash over and over again. But the moment you upgrade your beliefs, suddenly you can run at a whole new level. You stop seeing obstacles as roadblocks and start seeing them as stepping stones. You stop saying I can't, and you start saying I must. You stop shrinking your dreams to fit your current beliefs, and you start expanding your beliefs to fit your biggest dreams. Opening strong hook. Pain is a part of life. Every single person in this room, every person watching has experienced pain. Physical pain, emotional pain, financial pain, heartbreak, betrayal. And here's the truth, you can't escape it. Pain is inevitable. But suffering is optional. The reason some people get crushed by pain while others rise because of it comes down to one thing, the meaning they attach to that pain. Because pain by itself is just an event. It's neutral. It's something that happens. But the story you create around it, the belief you form from it, the meaning you attach, that's what shapes your destiny. Pain can be the thing that makes you bitter, or it can be the thing that makes you unstoppable. The difference isn't the pain. The difference is the meaning. Driving deeper, engaging tone. Think about it for a second. We all know people who have gone through incredible hardship. Some lose a job and say, that's it, I'm a failure, I'll never recover. Others lose a job and say, this is the push I needed to reinvent myself, to finally start the business I always dreamed of. Same event, different meaning, different life. Some people go through heartbreak and say, I'll never trust anyone again. Love is dangerous. Others say, that relationship taught me what I will never settle for again, and now I know what I truly deserve. Same pain, different meaning, and when the meaning changes, the future changes. My personal story, Tony's style of vulnerability. I remember when I was younger, my home environment was painful. My parents fought all the time, there was chaos, there was scarcity, and I remember thinking, why me? Why is my life so hard? Why can't I have the parents I want, the home I want? And in that moment, the meaning I was given to my pain was that I wasn't enough, that life was unfair, that I was destined for struggle. That meaning could have destroyed me, but over time I decided to change the meaning. I said, if my mom had been the mom I thought I wanted, I wouldn't be as driven. I wouldn't care about helping people break through suffering, because I wouldn't know what suffering felt like. I wouldn't be obsessed with creating change, because I wouldn't have had to create it in my own life first. I took the same pain, but I gave it a new meaning, and that meaning became my fuel. What was once the greatest source of my suffering became the greatest source of my drive, my compassion, my mission. Without that pain, I wouldn't be standing here with you today. That's the power of rewriting the meaning and engagement, asking the audience to reflect. So let me ask you right now, what's the pain you've been carrying? Maybe it's something from your childhood. Maybe it's the loss of someone you loved. Maybe it's betrayal. Maybe it's the pain of never feeling like you were enough. Whatever it is, I want you to realize it's not the pain that's been keeping you stuck. It's the meaning you've given it. If you keep saying, this happened to me, therefore I can't grow, therefore I can't trust, therefore I can't succeed, you're making pain your prison. But if you say, this happened for me to make me stronger, to give me perspective, to prepare me for something greater, you're making pain your power. Which meaning will you choose? And examples from history and famous figures. Look at some of the greatest leaders in history. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, 27 years locked away. He could have said, this is the end of my life. My pain means I'll never have freedom again. But instead, he chose a different meaning. He said, this pain is preparing me to lead my people. This pain is the foundation of freedom. And when he walked out of that prison, he didn't just walk out as a man. He walked out as a leader who changed history. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps during the Holocaust, wrote that even in the most horrific suffering, people who survived were the ones who found meaning. He said suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. He lost his family, he lost everything, but he chose to give his pain the meaning of purpose, to help others find meaning in their lives. And his work has touched millions. Bringing it back to audience relatable everyday examples. And it's not just leaders or world changers. Think about your own life. Think about the heartbreaks you've had. For some of you, that heartbreak meant I'll never love again. For others, it meant that pain taught me to set higher standards, to know my worth. Think about the financial struggles you've had. For some, it meant I'll always be broke. For others, it meant I'll never settle for this again. I'm going to learn how to create wealth and freedom. Pain is not the end. Pain is the beginning. Pain is the teacher. Pain is the sculptor shaping you into who you're meant to be, but only if you choose the meaning that empowers you. Building energy, challenging the audience. I want you to hear me on this. Some of you have been carrying pain for 10, 20, or 30 years, and the meaning you've attached to it has been chaining you down. Maybe it's, my parents didn't love me, so I'm not lovable. Maybe it's, I failed before, so I'll always fail. Maybe it's, they betrayed me, so people can't be trusted. But here's the truth. You can rewrite the meaning right now. You don't have to wait for someone else to apologize. You don't have to wait for the past to change. You have the power to change the meaning in this moment. When you take control of the meaning, you take control of your life. And suddenly the same pain that once felt like a curse becomes the reason you rise. It becomes the fuel that makes you unstoppable. It becomes the fire that wakes you up and says, no matter what I've been through, I am still here. And I am stronger because of it. Her personal breakthrough story adding more emotional depth. I'll never forget meeting a woman at one of my events who had been through unimaginable pain. She had been abused, she had been abandoned, and she carried this belief that she was broken, that she was unworthy of love. That was the meaning she had attached to her pain. And in that moment, she was suffering. But as we worked through it, something shifted. She realized that her pain didn't mean she was broken. It meant she was resilient. It meant she had survived. It meant she had a voice that could help others who were suffering too. And when she shifted that meaning, her whole identity changed. And she went from a victim to a leader. She went from broken to unshakable. Same pain, new meaning. In new life. Energy rise, call to action for audience. So what's your pain? And more importantly, what meaning are you going to give it starting today? Because you can't control what happened to you, but you can control the story you attach to it. And once you change the meaning, the pain no longer owns you. You own it. You take the thing that once looked like it would destroy you, and you use it to create your greatest strength. And that's the power of rewriting the meaning of pain. Eye-opening, grabbing attention. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with who you believe you are. Let me say that again, because if you get this, it can change everything. The strongest force inside of you is not your habits, not your desires, not even your environment, it's your identity. Your identity is the story you believe about yourself. And once you buy into it, you'll do anything to stay consistent with it. If you see yourself as someone who's lazy, you'll keep finding reasons not to act. If you see yourself as someone who's unlucky, in, you'll always notice how the world is against you. But if you see yourself as someone who's resourceful, unstoppable, committed, then your behavior will rise to match that identity. Your life doesn't change when you get a new strategy. Your life changes when you get a new identity. Driving deeper audience engagement. Think about this. How many of you have ever set a goal? Maybe you said, this year I'm going to lose weight, or this year I'm going to save money, or this year I'm going to start that business. And you got motivated for a while, you took some action, but eventually you slipped back into the same old patterns. Why does that happen? It's not because you didn't know what to do. It's not because you didn't have the resources. It's because deep down your identity never changed. If you tell yourself, I'm a person who struggles with my health, then even if you go to the gym for a few weeks, you'll eventually sabotage yourself because your identity pulls you back. If you tell yourself, I'm terrible with money, then even if you get a raise, you'll find ways to spend it all because your identity needs to stay consistent. We don't get what we want. We get what we are. Our personal story, Tony's shift. When I was younger, I had to make an identity shift myself. My old identity was I'm just a kid with no future, no money, no connections. That identity kept me small. That identity kept me powerless. But when I decided to shift and say, I'm not just a poor kid, I am a leader, I am relentless, I am someone who will not settle for a life of limitation, everything changed. I started acting differently because I saw myself differently. I started studying every day, working on myself, pushing myself because that's what leaders do. The results came later, but the shift happened the moment my identity changed. And that's what most people miss. They try to change their behavior without ever changing their identity. And behavior without identity shift never lasts. Ever relatable everyday examples? Think about someone who quit smoking. They say, I'm trying to quit. That's one identity. They're still identifying as a smoker who's trying to quit. But then there's the person who says, I don't smoke. That's not who I am anymore. That's a whole different level. One is behavior change, the other is identity change. And the person with the new identity, they don't have to try as hard because everything flows from that new story of who they are. Or take someone who's been struggling financially. If they say, I'm terrible with money, they'll keep proving that story right. But if they shift to, I am a disciplined, intelligent wealth creator, they start acting like it. They make different choices, they start paying attention, they start finding ways to grow, because that's who they are now. The results always follow the identity. Hey, challenging the audience interactive moment. I want you to ask yourself right now, what's the identity you've been living and that's been holding you back? Maybe it's, I'm the kind of person who always messes things up. Maybe it's, I'm shy, I'm not confident, I'm not good with people. Maybe it's, I'm just average. Be honest with yourself because those identities are running your life whether you admit it or not. Now imagine this. What if, instead of saying, I'm shy, you said, I'm a leader who connects deeply with people? What if instead of saying, I'm lazy, you said, I'm disciplined and driven? What if instead of saying, I'm just average, you said, I'm extraordinary, I'm someone who demands the best from myself every single day? Do you think your behavior would change? Of course it would. Because your actions always flow from who you believe you are. Examples from great achievers. Look at the greatest achievers. Muhammad Ali didn't just fight like a champion, he believed he was a champion long before the world saw it. He said, I am the greatest, not I will be, I am. That was identity. Michael Jordan didn't say, I'm trying to be a great basketball player. He said, I am the one who will not be outworked. I am the one who shows up in the clutch. That was identity. And even in the business world, Elon Musk doesn't say, I'm a guy trying to build companies. His identity is, I'm an innovator, I'm a problem solver, I'm the one who pushes humanity forward. That identity drives him to take actions that most people would never even consider. The results are a reflection of the identity. Psychological depth explanation. You have to understand your brain has a deep need for consistency. Once you say, this is who I am, your mind will work tirelessly to make sure your actions line up with that. Even if it's painful, even if it's destructive, you'll keep doing it because your identity demands it. That's why some people stay stuck in toxic patterns. They'd rather be consistent with an old identity than face the discomfort of creating a new one. But here's the key. The moment you upgrade your identity, your entire life upgrades. Because your brain will fight just as hard to stay consistent with your new, empowering identity as it did with your old, limiting one. You don't have to push yourself as much because now your behaviors align with who you believe you are. True personal story, real event at an event. I'll never forget a man who came to one of my seminars. He was overweight, unhealthy, and depressed. And his identity was, I'm just a big guy. I've always been this way, it's who I am. And I said to him, that's not who you are. That's who you've been conditioned to believe you are. Who you really are is strong, disciplined, committed. And when he started to own that new identity, his behavior changed instantly. He started eating differently, moving differently, and showing up differently. Months later, he had lost over 100 pounds. But the real transformation wasn't in his body, it was in his identity. The new body was just the byproduct of the new belief about who he was. So audience, challenge, rising energy. So I'm asking you, who do you need to become? Not what goal do you want to achieve, not what resolution you want to set. Who do you need to become to live the life you want? Because if you want lasting change, stop focusing on behavior and start focusing on identity. Decide today who you are, and once you decide, live into it fully, without hesitation, without compromise. Because the moment your identity shifts, your life shifts with it. Listen to me. Your life is not controlled by your conditions. It's controlled by your decisions. And the most powerful decision you can ever make is to change the story you tell yourself about who you are and what your life means, because your story creates your reality. If your story has been one of limitation, of fear, of excuses, then that's the life you've been living. But you've seen today, you have the power to rewrite that story. You can destroy the limiting beliefs that have been chaining you down, and you can replace them with beliefs that empower you. You can take the pain you've been carrying, and instead of letting it destroy you, you can give it a meaning that makes you unstoppable. And when you shift your identity, when you decide that you are no longer that old version of yourself, but someone new, someone powerful, someone unshakable, your entire life will follow. This isn't just motivation. This isn't just hype. This is the truth about human behavior. Your past doesn't equal your future. Your failures don't define you. Your pain is not the end of the story. It can be the beginning of a whole new one. The question is, what story are you going to tell from this day forward? Will you keep living in the old narrative that says you're not enough? Or will you step into the new story that says you're powerful beyond measure? Will you let your past be your prison? Or will you let it be your passport to a future greater than anything you've ever imagined? You already have everything you need inside of you. The hunger, the resilience, the power, the drive, it's there. It's been there all along. But it only comes alive when you stop waiting for the world to change and you change the story you're living in. So here's my challenge to you right now, not tomorrow, not someday, but right now. Decide what your new story is. Speak it, own it, live it. Because the moment you change your story, you change your life.